The Ashcraft-Oft family gatherings were less about savoring the meticulously prepared feasts and more about a grand display of financial bravado, a ritual as old as the sprawling estate perched on the sun-kissed hills outside Napa Valley. The monthly dinners, held in the opulent dining hall with its towering chandeliers and walls adorned with ancestral portraits, were a stage where wealth was brandished like a weapon. This particular evening promised to be an especially grueling spectacle, the air thick with the scent of aged wine and unspoken rivalry. I slipped into my usual spot near the crackling fireplace, a quiet observer amid the storm of my cousin's ostentatious boasts, my presence barely registering as they vied to outshine one another. The room buzzed with their voices, each trying to drown out the last. Preston, lounging with the confidence of inherited privilege, swirled his glass of Cabernet and drawled, "Just closed on a ranch in Jackson Hole right next to that tech mogul who owns half of Silicon Valley. Prime real estate, you wouldn't believe the views." His smirk was a challenge, but Cassandra wasn't about to let it stand. With a theatrical flourish, she snapped open her designer clutch, her manicured nails glinting under the chandelier light. "Please," she scoffed, her tone dripping with disdain. "We just secured a vineyard in Tuscany, private access to the Mediterranean. You can't put a price on that kind of elegance." I concealed my amusement behind a sip of iced tea, the cool liquid a stark contrast to the heat of their competition. If only they knew the truth, I thought, a secret simmering beneath my calm exterior. The clatter of silverware paused as Aunt Evelyn's sharp voice sliced through the chatter. "Nora, you've been awfully quiet tonight," she said, her eyes narrowing with that familiar mix of pity and judgment. Preston leaned forward, his faux sympathy as thick as the wine he sipped. "Yes, we were just wondering about your living situation." There it was, the inevitable jab, delivered with the precision of a seasoned archer. "What about it?" I replied, setting my glass down with deliberate calm, my fingers steady despite the sting of their words. "This cramped duplex in Portland," Preston continued, his tone laced with condescension. "Still renting, right? The one on Alder Street?" Cassandra chimed in, feigning surprise with a theatrical gasp. "I didn't know people our age still rented. How quaint." I nearly laughed aloud. To them, I was a struggling tenant, scraping by in a modest apartment, a shadow of the family's grandeur. In reality, the Alder Street complex was the cornerstone of my first commercial acquisition under West Pine Holdings, a company I'd built from the ground up. I owned it, lock, stock, and barrel. "I liked the space," I said evenly, keeping my voice neutral, a mask for the pride swelling within me. "You're 35, sweetie," Aunt Evelyn interjected, her patronizing smile as polished as her pearls. "It's time to grow up, buy something real, something worthy of the Ashcraft-Oft name." Her words hung in the air, a challenge wrapped in velvet. If only she knew the truth. My portfolio, quietly amassed over a decade, spanned $1.8 billion, encompassing multifamily buildings, gleaming commercial towers, and yes, Ashcraft-Oft Plaza itself, the very estate where they gathered monthly. I'd acquired it 6 months ago through a discreet private equity arm, a move so stealthy they'd never connect the dots to me, the underachieving Nora. "I've managed just fine," I replied, my tone cool but firm. Preston smirked, leaning back in his chair. "You can't even afford a mortgage, can you? Living hand to mouth while we build empires." I let them talk, their voices a chorus of misjudgment, because soon the lease renewal for Ashcraft-Oft Plaza would land on their desks, and my name, Nora Hale, would be emblazoned across the letterhead, a revelation that would turn their smugness to ash. Dad finally glanced up from his wine glass, his expression weary but indulgent. Now, Preston. Not everyone's blessed with your sharp instincts." Nora chose her path. Aunt Evelyn sighed, a theatrical exhale that suggested I'd disappointed them by not marrying a hedge fund manager or launching a glitzy lifestyle blog. They pictured me trudging through Portland's rainy streets, showing cheap walk-ups to broke grad students, surviving on meager commission checks. What they couldn't fathom was that Nora Hale, the family's black sheep, was also the unseen force behind West Pine Holdings, a shadowy titan quietly acquiring properties across the Pacific Northwest with a focus on ethical growth and tenant welfare, the antithesis of their flash and crash developments. Speaking of real estate, Cassandra interjected, her eyes sparkling with mischief. Have you heard about that situation on Alder Street? Some firm bought the entire block. They're planning to knock it all down. She added with mock pity, Guess that little apartment of yours will finally go, Nora. I kept my expression neutral, though inside I reveled in the irony. I was the buyer, and I had no intention of demolishing anything. The Alder Street complex, with its brick facades, vintage detailing, and rent protections for families who'd called it home for decades, was a hidden gem I was meticulously renovating, with respect for its history. Really? I asked, my voice laced with feigned curiosity. I hadn't heard. Of course not, Preston smirked, his confidence unshaken. Deals that size are way out of your league, cousin. If you get booted, Aunt Evelyn said brightly, you can always move back into the guest house. We'll help you find something more respectable, maybe even someone respectable to share it with. Her laughter tinkled like broken glass. I'm happy, I said flatly, my patience thinning, and so is my landlord. Cassandra gave a tight, disbelieving laugh. You can't live a small life forever, dear. The Hale name used to mean something in this state. Her words stung, but they were wrong. The Hale name still meant something profound, though not in the way they imagined. Real estate circles, West Pine Holdings was a beacon of integrity, synonymous with tenant-first investing and historic preservation, a quiet rebellion against the family's legacy of bulldozing communities for clout. Actually, Dad said, setting down his glass with a thud that silenced the room, this meeting's partly about business. The board's worried about the new owner of Ashcraft Plaza. I tilted my head, feigning interest. West Pine Holdings bought a majority, stake 6 months ago, he continued. No one knows who they are. Possibly a foreign investor. Preston nodded sagely. Has to be. These tycoons love legacy properties. If only they knew the feared mystery investor was me, sitting there in a thrifted cardigan and scuffed boots, a wolf in sheep's clothing. And now, Dad, pressed on. They're asking tough questions, especially about our accounting practices. Creative accounting, like the way Preston borrowed from the building fund to finance his Jackson Hole retreat, or how Cassandra labeled her luxury handbags as client engagement expenses. I'm sure it's nothing serious, Aunt Evelyn interjected, her pearls twitching with unease. The Hale name still carries weight. That's just it, Dad cut in, his voice hardening. This West Pine person doesn't seem impressed. By names, they've ordered a full audit. A ripple of panic passed through the room, hastily veiled behind their designer smiles. An audit would unearth more than questionable expenses. It would expose the labyrinth of their financial misdeeds, a house of cards ready to collapse. Maybe Nora could help, Cassandra said suddenly, her tone syrupy sweet. She works in real estate, doesn't she? Maybe she knows someone at the management company. Their heads turned to me in unison, my status shifting from embarrassment to potential savior in an instant. I mostly work with smaller residential clients, I said smoothly, my lie as polished as their jewelry. Nothing on the scale of Ashcraft Plaza. For God's sake, Preston snapped, his patience fraying. You can't even help your own family. Mom shot him a warning glance, but her silence spoke volumes. Even Dad returned to scrolling on his phone, uninterested in defending me. They had no inkling of how helpful I was about to be, though not in the way they hoped. Tomorrow morning, West Pine Holdings would release a public statement. Effective immediately, Ashcraft Plaza would undergo major operational reform. No more shadow budgets, no more nepotistic contracts, no more treating the building like a family credit card. I glanced around the penthouse, noting the artwork purchased with maintenance funds, the couches triple their listed price, the fixtures, installed by Cassandra's husband's firm with bloated invoices. Anyway, I said, rising and brushing off my jeans, some of us have early mornings. Cassandra smirked. Off to show more rent-controlled studios, I suppose? I slung my worn leather bag over my shoulder, its contents, a board briefing. Legal filings and renovation proposals worth more than the room's furnishings, hidden from their view. No, Nora, Aunt Evelyn called sweetly. Next time, maybe dress more like a Hale. Appearances matter. I smiled, a glint of steel in my eyes. Don't worry, I said. Tomorrow I'll look exactly like the Hales expect. They just didn't realize I was already the one running the show. The next morning, I stood in my real office, a sprawling penthouse floor overlooking downtown Portland's glittering skyline, a testament to a decade of silent ambition. My assistant, Isla, entered briskly, setting a cappuccino beside my laptop. The Ashcraft Plaza board is already seated, she said, her voice steady. Your family got here early, trying to charm the independent members.